little bit ago. Okay, well, Carol said we're doing week 8, and then we're going to do week 9 today, just so we can finish before Thanksgiving. Last week we covered the blessings of being in a blended family, or the blessings of being a parent, step-parent. This is more of the dark side of being a step-parent. It's still a blessing, but there's a lot of challenges that people have to deal with. It's not, even first marriage, there's a lot of issues that need to be done, but one of the things that is different about a blended family is most of the time you're bringing children in from day one. So you don't get the honeymoon period where it's just the two of you before the kids come and those kind of things. So it's just full of a lot more challenges. Plus there are ex-spouses usually and those kind of things that just, they don't want you to succeed. So there's going to be a lot of challenges there. Okay, so we just call this rule by yours, mine, and ours. It's kind of like the inmates running the asylum, right? The parents are not doing their job, and so there are problems that come up. But generally when there are problems in blending yours and mine, and then someday maybe ours, right? There's just all sorts of things. But generally, if we're counseling a couple, we go to the pyramid to see what's out of order. Because that's generally what the problem is something is out of order. Either God isn't where he needs to be in either one of their relationships, or maybe he's in one and not the other. But he's really not where he should be, number one. Most of the time, even with Christian couples, we see that the marriage comes after the kids. And that's why there's problems. Our nephew, just moved out because his fiance wanted her kids to come in, and then there was no room for him.
Well, and let's just back up. This was his wife. They got divorced.
Right.
They remarried years later, and they broke up, and then he moved back, and they were talking marriage again. So the third time getting married. But again, her kids took priority over everything else. Her kids and the grandkids.
Right. So, her priority pyramid's out of order. So there was no place for him in it, right? And we see that a lot, especially when it's not a first marriage. Kids tend to come before the spouse. It's almost natural, but because it's your kids, right? You want them to succeed, you want them to do well, but most of the time people forget that the kids leave after a while, hopefully. And then it's like you're stuck with your spouse, and it's like, who is this person? Right? Been sort of spending 20, 30 years with them now, who are they? Right? The kids are gone, the empty nest. A lot of divorces happen when the nest is empty, because you have not spent any time working with your spouse. So when there's blending problems, we need to look at the pyramid and try to figure out what is it that's out of order. Is God not in it? Are the kids up too high? Or is the ex too important? All those kind of things we have to look at. God has a way of doing it that works, and if we do it his way, it works. And if we don't do it his way, it usually doesn't. I mean, it's kind of black and white that way. Okay, so if there are problems, we have to look again at the pyramid. God has to be first. All things are possible with God. Nothing is impossible for him. Now, his will, we look at that. His will generally is for restoration and reconciliation. You know, I said a prayer at one point when things weren't so good. I'm like, okay, Lord, and I'm like throwing a Hail Mary out there. It's like, if you're really out there, right, you either need to fix this marriage or break it, because it can't continue the way it is.
But you weren't a Christian then, right?
Like I said, I had no relationship. I'm just kind of throwing it out there. Hey, if you're out there, help me here. And he fixed it.
Amen.
Right? But the obvious thing to me, not obvious at first, but later, I realized he really, if I gave him a choice, he only had one. And that was to fix it. God is not going to break it if you give him the choice.
Right.
He's going to fix it. So, a lesson learned.
Amen.
It doesn't take two to be willing.
It
Of
does.
course it does.
That's what I say. God can do it, but you have to be, you are willing. She
I
has
was
to be
willing, she was willing.
Yes.
So he was able.
Amen.
God is always able.
Yep.
But, as we'll see over in the next week's lesson over here, we do have free will. We can obey or not,
Right.
right? But when God is where he needs to be in both parties, and we are willing to submit to God's will, then he will restore and reconcile. But, you know, like I said, not all of us obey. So, even if that's God's will, if we're not obeying what God wants us to do, it still doesn't always work. But, you know, we look, I think we covered this in a lesson earlier, but actually this is more in the Beyond Divorce class. Not all marriages were entered into with God. People get married for all sorts of reasons. And a lot of times God's not involved. We don't ask, hey God, is this the right person for me?
We should.
Who really asks, you know?
We should.
But if you are a Christian, you've been one for a while, you're maturing in that spiritual life and the walk, then yeah, God's first, so you include him in the process. But most of us, when we're still sinners, we're lost, God's not in it. We don't even ask. We don't consider who he may have.
And that's what we one of the things we do teach Saturday for the premarital.
Right.
We ask them, get confirmation you are with the person that God wants you to be with. Have you heard from God? Have you got confirmation from God?
Right.
Are you both being truthful with one another? We have done so many counseling sessions for premarital, and one of the parties has not been truthful. And until they get married, then it gets exposed what's going on. But you're already married. But those are some of the things we go through. We have 3 videos that we show, and believe me, you will be amazed what you're taught in that one class that lasts all day. Rod, did you have something?
How many people don't tell the truth in their premarital counseling? What
Oh,
percent?
there's a lot of them that don't tell the truth.
I don't have specific numbers,
Yeah,
but it's amazingly high
yeah,
that somebody hasn't said something.
right.
You know.
And everywhere
That's why I
from,
end up in postmarital counseling.
and everywhere from not being honest about how they're going to handle all of our kids. You know, my kids are still gonna have my rule, and your kids will have my rule too, but a different rule. We've even had circumstances where there's been lying or not telling the truth on finances. And I mean, big time. This one couple that we did the premarital for, 3 months later, she got the mail. She was home and got the mail. He always got the mail. And she got the mail one time, and there's a $15,000 credit card bill. She didn't even know they had a credit card. And it was his. And he'd get the mail and hide it. She never saw it. And luckily, her folks had money, and they paid it off, but you can bet they had one big discussion, even her folks. But, I mean, these are the things you need to know. you're going to be one. How long do you think you can hide those things? It's only so long you can hide it, but
I have a
people
dumb
will try
question.
it.
I have a dumb question.
Mhm.
You mean he didn't go out and get another credit card and keep charging once they paid it off?
Well, I don't know, he might have still been putting charges on that card, I don't know.
Uh-huh.
We didn't get
They
that
have to be-
specific.
They still go back to the same track record.
But when it was exposed to us, it was a $15,000 one. You know, it wouldn't have been so bad if it was a few hundred, you know, you usually can grab it together and pay it off. But this was $15,000.
I guess I'm gonna share, the ex-wife was hiding a lot of things from him, so when we got married, it all became mine. And we finally got it all worked out, but it was rough.
Called baggage.
Baggage.
It was, yeah, they don't tell you that.
She didn't think I had any baggage. With
We
6
all got
kids from 2
baggage.
different wives.
Yeah, we all got baggage.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so, you know, people, you know, it's, when people are dating, it's their representative
Yep.
that's doing the dating, right? On both sides, right? We're all putting our best foot forward, and we want to impress, and we want to seal the deal. And then when the contract's signed, it's like, oh, here's the real person, right? Now, I was just reading through Luke, I think it was this morning, and, you know, it was that part about where, you know, all the things that are done in the dark are going to be exposed, and the things that are whispered will be broadcast
Yep.
on the loudspeaker, right? It's, you can't hide anything
Sooner or
from God.
later, yeah.
And it's just, you know, part of going through this class is the realization that honesty is the best policy. Because you need to deal with the stuff before you commit.
Right.
Just so if there are any red flags and anything that is a major disagreement area, then, you know, you can either deal with it or say, oh, you know, let's just agree to disagree and we'll move on. Yeah.
Something we were just talking about yesterday, actually, his ex was just twisting something and misinterpreting something and running with it in a direction that it wasn't ever intended to. And I chuckled, and he was surprised by that. And I told him, look, one of the great things about always being honest, which we strive to do in any situation, is that you don't have to worry.
Right.
You know, it's the truth, and that's what we teach our kids, is that the truth will always come out. Sometimes it might take a long time. Sometimes it
But it
might be
will.
immediate. But the point is, I mean, I used to love it when my ex would lie. I'm like, you're just making my job easier. Because at some point, the kids will know the truth. At some point, you know, they'll just come to light. And then we also don't have to stress out on like proving the truth when, you know, we kind of just give it to God, and it
Right.
is a relief.
Well, the other good thing about telling the truth is you don't have to remember anything.
Yes.
Right.
I have a terrible memory, and so that's very helpful too.
So if you're lying, you have to remember who you told
Right.
what,
It's, yeah,
Right.
too much.
right? And sooner or later, you're gonna screw up, and the truth is still gonna come out.
Not tell a lie.
Okay, so not all marriages are entered into with God. As people, even though they're lost, when they get married, they can become found and be saved, and then God can work with that, right?
Yes.
So, like I said, God can do anything with anything. But He has to be involved on both sides for things to work. You know, because of our sinful nature, sometimes we get the wrong person, it could be the wrong time, it could be the wrong reason, you know, all those kind of things. Now, in a blended family, especially when there are kids involved, you spoke about baggage, you know, you bring your baggage with whatever it is. It could be a steamer trunk, it could be an overnight bag. You have baggage. We just have different amounts. Whatever that baggage is, it really needs to be unpacked before you enter into some new relationship. You have to figure out, you know, part of that, you know, taking some time in between here is to really spend time vertically to figure out, okay, what was my part in this? You know, that's a big part of the Beyond Divorce classes. It's like the second chapter is accepting your part You know, you had a piece of this pie, you need to deal with that piece, not the whole pie, just your piece. But you need to figure out what the root cause was. I mean, there's abuse, adultery, addictions of all sorts. But Dan and Liz Smith do the Beyond Force class. He draws better trees than I do. But it's the same.
Is that what that is? I thought that was a bomb.
It's it could be an atomic bomb.
It could be
It's
it looks like.
mushroom cloud. But,
It's like,
okay, so there's fruit and there's roots, so it's probably a tree.
okay.
Okay.
Should have used a green marker for the tree,
Yeah, I
and
should.
brown for the.
I could use a red marker, make some apples.
Yeah,
But when you're trying to figure out, okay, things just didn't work out. So what's the problem here? Is it me? Is it them? Yeah, it's a little them. It's a lot me. You know, what is it? But you have to deal with the roots. Everybody knows if you pull a weed and the roots come out, it's gone.
Yeah.
But if it breaks off, it'll just grow back, right?
You know,
It's-
I've been cutting weeds, and you know what's horrible is that you think that you've cut it, but when you've allowed sin in your life to stay there a long time, it has such a deep root.
Yeah.
And I'm at some of those weeds are just horrible, and I just, it's sin.
Sometimes you need a backhoe to get rid of some of that stuff.
And you
Oh
still
my.
leave little tentacles
bomb.
down in there.
Or
Dynamite.
dynamite, yeah. So
Just started catching on fire.
as you're trying to work on yourself, one of the best things to do is just start writing down some of these things that you feel, that God is making aware that, hey, this is an issue, this is an issue, this is an issue. Write them down so that you can identify. One of the things that's kind of an issue right now is we have a lot of enemies and we're not identifying them. Oh, they're just, don't worry about the guy behind the curtain over here, right? But you have to identify what the root issue is so you can deal with it, because that's the sin part. So you have to identify the sin, which is the root of the problem, like jealousy, greed, those kind of things. Those are root issues. So you have to deal with that, deal with the sin, identify the sin so that it can be removed. When you remove the root, then the tree dies. Most of us, if we go to the doctor, we have a runny nose, he gives us something to keep our nose from running. He doesn't cure the problem, he just treats the symptom. Most of us, at some point in our life, have had some sort of a sin that we just managed.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it's not that bad.
That's good.
I got it. I can control this, whatever it is. But when you deal with the fruit or the symptoms of whatever the sin is producing, you trim the leaves off, you trim a limb here and there, prune it, it just grows back. And usually it grows back better,
Bigger.
with more fruit.
Bolder.
Yeah.
Bigger, better, and bolder.
Yeah, so, one of the scriptures talks about, you sweep your house clean, but if you haven't replaced that demon that you got rid of, he comes back with 7 of his buddies. Now it's even worse, right? So figure out what the root causes of your past failures are, the sins. It could be a whole bunch of different things. It's kind of weird how all these all start with an A. But
Let
it just happens.
me just interject here a minute too. We have Dan and Liz teach the Beyond Divorce class here for us, because we teach several other classes during the week. But that class is especially important to them because they met in that class. They got healed in that class. They both got rid of their baggage and became whole. And that class means something extra special to them. And they asked us, can we teach this class? We know this is where we got saved and got back on the right path. They were always on a good path with God, but they were accelerated on their path with God. And we said, absolutely. So they teach it here at Phoenix for as well as now Dream City Church. We also have a gal teach it, a single gal, Angie, and she's the one that has raised up disciples herself down in South Phoenix. So around 7th Street
7th
and
Avenue and
7th
Broadway.
Avenue and Broadway. She teaches on Saturday mornings. And then we have another couple from Avondale, Yvette and Alfonso, teach over at their church, New Life. Is that the New Life Covenant? We have a New Life out now, Watuki, and then Avondale, we have a New Life Covenant, so it's hard to keep the names apart. But they teach it on Thursday nights. So Dan and Liz teach here on Tuesday nights from 6 to 7. Yvette and Alfonso in Avondale from 7 to 8 on Thursday nights. And then Angie teaches her class on Saturday morning from 9 to 10 out of her home. So there are 3 classes available every week for Beyond Divorce. Blended families we teach here, and we also teach down at the Dream Center every Thursday night from 6 to 7. Austin and Christina used to teach it at their church. They're not teaching right at the moment. And then we had a couple others that were teaching it to Patty and Jeff out in New Life, out in our so we have many classes going on in the valley. If if some place is not convenient, let us know, and we'll see if we can't get one started out in that area for you. But I just wanted to bring that part out about the other classes.
Almost like AA meetings.
Okay. Getting back to the dark side here, a lot of the dark side comes from, there's all sorts of horror stories when you're talking about step parents, the whole Cinderella story, the wicked stepmother and all that kind of stuff. There's all kind of abuse that happens when there's step parents involved. Not to say that bio parents don't do the same thing. It just seems to be the stereotypical thing that, one of the step parents is the one that does the evil stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But we're Christians, so we're not going to do that. But we are trying to realize, well, I got off track. We're still dealing with the root causes, okay? So part of that is identifying what the sin was, and then you need to rebuild the vertical relationship, getting God back where he needs to be. It's confessing the sin, repenting, receiving God's forgiveness for that sin, and then forgiving yourself. Psalm 51 is a good thing to look at for that. It's what David did to kind of rebuild his vertical after his thing with Bathsheba. Something to understand is you are responsible for your own choices and decisions. Yes. Romans 14:12, Matthew 12:36 basically say, so then every one of us shall give account of himself to God. Right? You can't, on that day of judgment, you can't say, well, they made me. It's like, here's what I did. Yes, I did that. You don't have any other way to do it. Matthew 12:36, but I say unto you that every idle word that men shall speak, they shall give account thereof in the day of judgment. So it's very important to realize you're responsible for your decisions, your choices, and every word you say.
Yeah, because, go ahead, dear.
I was struggling with forgiving myself.
Mm-hmm.
What God revealed to me is that you're basically saying that God sending his son wasn't enough.
Wow.
So that's pride.
Right.
So,
Yeah, a lot of people struggle with that.
yes.
It's like, well, yeah, I can forgive everybody else, but
Right.
I am so bad.
Yeah.
I can't forgive myself. But like I said, it's a pride issue. We're putting ourselves above God. If God can forgive us, what's the problem? Right? You should be happy to be forgiven.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But, that's the way the devil works. He's like, no, you're not worthy.
What about when you get the devil made me do it?
Sometimes,
Sometimes he did.
but sometimes it's just you
It's still a choice.
in your flesh.
Right,
He's gonna get you in your weakest place where you already have weakness.
right.
Yeah. So he tempts,
Yes.
right? The devil will tempt you, and if you're strong enough to resist the temptation, he will accuse you to try to make you think you're not worthy of God's
Right.
love.
Mhm.
And if you still can get through that, then he starts oppressing.
Right,
So he just keeps coming back a little stronger, a little stronger, a little stronger.
but you are responsible for
But
your
you're-
own,
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
because resist the devil and he will flee.
right,
Right? So even when it gets really bad, you still got to put God first.
right,
You know, and like Jesus said, it is written.
right.
Use the scripture. That's the sword. The scripture is a sword. You know.
And we have many times been asked to go to people's houses and help them reclaim their house when the devil is really
We had that
inside
done.
of them. And we tell them, you know, take some anointed oil or cooking oil, whatever. Make the sign of the cross
Mhm.
going out the door, coming back in the door.
In
By
every
the
room.
blood of Jesus, I claim victory over you. You must leave this house. You are not allowed in this house. Reclaim your space.
We had that
Every
done.
room in the house, every entrance in and out, even in your car. If Satan's attacking you
Mhm.
in your car, don't be afraid to do it. And sometimes that's what we have to do.
I had the cards
And in
done.
Dave's defense, him saying it was pride that didn't, a lot of people don't know that's what it is.
Mhm.
We didn't know. We didn't know. We just thought, well, he will forgive everybody else but not me. We didn't know that was being prideful of ourselves
Mhm.
until we heard it and really it sunk in our hearts. Not only our ears, but in our heart. Holy smokes. We're the one why we can't move forward. Because we haven't really listened to what God's trying to tell us. It's not that we were prideful or anything. We didn't know.
Mhm.
And that's why these classes are so important. You don't know until you know. Jamie, did you have something?
I was going to say one of the fantastic things about temptation, I think, is, so I realized this a few years ago with me, is I have certain weaknesses that I've always had, you know, and I think a lot of people are like that. Whether it's, I don't know, food or sex or, you know, being deceitful or manipulative, whatever it is. And once I really pinpointed and accepted what mine were and like prayed on them and was very aware of them, it was easier for me to kind of see when a spiritual attack was kind of coming.
Right.
And I started to kind of laugh at it too because I realized that Satan just kind of plays off those same tricks over and over and over again.
Oh, yeah.
And so then it became so much easier to just like brush those aside. It's like, okay, well, I know your tricks kind of a thing, and you know my weaknesses. But when you're God's, you don't really have to.
Yeah, that's great. You know, Satan is not that creative,
Right. Yeah.
but he's really, really good at what he does.
Yeah.
Right.
And we're not that smart, you know.
Yeah.
And we're easily deceived because we want the sin, you know. So it's very easy to fall into the temptation. Good point. But yeah, we need to forgive ourselves because God has done it. You know, we're responsible for our choices. Divorce is the hardest on the kids because what happens is not always, a lot of times the children get used as weapons, or they're the pawns in this little thing that's going on between the exes, right? Somebody said something to me one time at work that kind of hit home here. They were married when they came to work, and then they got divorced. But this one lady was just chatting, and one of the kids left the backpack at home or something. And she was just describing the hassle she had on the way to work, and it was like, you know, she was halfway to work, and then the kid says, "Oh, I forgot my backpack." But the way she said it was, "I left my backpack at Dad's house." So now it's Mom's house and it's Dad's house. When I was a kid, it was my house, right? So they kind of lose that identity because now I'm just in the middle here. You know, I lost my house, now it's Mom's and Dad's, and I'm just back and forth. So, you know, the kids really get the worst part of it. They're the collateral damage, and two people that choose sin over forgiveness and those kind of things, and, you know, they decide, you know, hey, I'm out of here, I don't care. But the children really end up paying the price for that. So, you know, one of the things if we're talking a little bit about forgiveness, you have to forgive your ex, and you need to ask your kids to forgive you.
Yes.
When you ask your kids to forgive you, put them through, it helps stop the generational curses.
Hallelujah.
Yeah.
My husband, he's done all of that, and it just keeps coming back. Everything keeps coming back on him. He's asked the ex-wife, and it'd be fine for a little while, and then it's just, you know. And with the kids, the same thing. Right?
Now it's on them.
You were
Right.
here a couple of weeks ago when Kenyatta was here,
Mhm.
the one that we
Right.
do the Christian radio station with. It took years for his ex-wife and his kids to come around. But you just gotta know that God has that timing, will be the perfect timing when that changes. And you gotta live for that day. In the meantime, you gotta continue doing what you know you're supposed to be doing for God and each other, and just know that God's got that covered,
Right.
okay?
Right, and that's what I don't, you know, as far as I know that they're used as the pawns,
Sure.
and I don't wanna partake in that.
And
So
I used to
let
get
'em-
blamed at one point too.
I just let them
for
stay with
being
their
a
mom,
wife.
and I try to, you know, I try to make contact with them on the phone, and
Just love them, that's all you
Yes.
can do.
Right.
You do what you need to do,
Yeah.
what you're supposed to do, the right thing. They will someday, we don't know when, but they'll realize who's right, who's wrong.
Right, but that
But-
waiting period is just, it's so.
It is hard.
That's,
well, that's
you
where
know,
patience comes in.
that's when the self-control, the patience, the
Right.
long-suffering, all
That's where
those
God's
kind of
gotta
things.
take over.
Suffering,
Sarah,
yeah.
like it's-
Larry, Sarah had something she wanted to ask, and then you gotta get on this
Yeah.
side too.
I
Sarah.
was just gonna say that it does take a lot of time, you can't force it, but it's a heart issue. It's just praying, cause it is reconciliation, it's the ultimate.
And then throw in the ex-wife using the children as pawns, that's
Right.
it's
We
even
know.
worse.
know.
But
You
see,
know?
I know what it is. I
You
know
gotta
the
forgive
warfare.
her.
Yeah.
And I just turn it over to God and
Yeah.
trust that He's working it for the good because I love Him and I'm called.
And he will bless that,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
right?
And the kids are watching you, how you're handling things,
Yeah.
in spite of them doing what they know is not
Right.
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 They're watching you, and you just have to be the godly examples of what a marriage, a true marriage, and a true relationship when God's in the middle is supposed to be. And that's what you got, live and breathe for God and each other. The rest will work out.
'Cause I almost left at one point because I didn't want to get in between, you know?
Yeah, you
I-
can't.
You go through, all this stuff goes through your,
Then
Sure.
Satan wins if you do
Mhm.
that.
right?
See, it's a battle.
Not in my house.
Right.
That's
It's a battle,
right.
you know, and we'll get to that here in a little bit. Just to wrap up this week's lesson, because we only got like 15 minutes left to do the other one, which should be a 45-minute class. But, you know, God likes to multiply, so part of dealing with your roots, get those root causes dealt with, strive for wholeness. Normally, I would just say become whole, but we should strive to be whole. It's a process. God likes to multiply, so when he multiplies a whole one by a whole one, he still gets one. That's the one flesh. 1 times 1 equals 1. He doesn't add in that instance. When he's creating a marriage, he multiplies. He doesn't take 1 and 1 and end up with 2. He multiplies and he gets the 1. Step-parents need to be stewards, not owners. And then be good examples of what a good marriage is supposed to be, because that's, your kids will imitate you, good or bad. So be good. Okay, that's gonna wrap up this week. We'll get started on the next one.